want to know, one of the concerns before in the lead-up was MSMEs.
Yes.
And, government's figures themselves suggest that you've had, 35,000 MSMEs closed down between 2020 and 2023. That's just the official number.
35 lakh.
Sorry?
35,000 you said?
Yeah, as per what the minister had said last year in Parliament, he had given the number of 35,000, which clearly was a government number. I'm saying the actual numbers are far higher. I'm just trying to understand, do you think enough was done in this budget for MSMEs?
So I think Mudra loans went up from like 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs. I feel the fact remains that employment matters. It's not necessarily whether MSCs hire them or large companies hire them. And Manish Sabharwal often rightly says, right, at the end of the day, everybody wants a job offer letter, wants some people who cannot be fired at will, at least 2 months notice, etc., etc. So MSMEs are important, but let us also not romanticize MSCs because they are not going to create the kind of formal employment that large corporates can.
Rajdeep,
Yes.
Additional financial allocations and announcements of credit, guarantee and technology is not going to, get the MSMEs that is required. What is required for MSMEs is to remove the compliance and regulatory burden on the ground, the regulatory cholesterol. The thing that they face every day are the calls from the inspectors and all of that. And I think that hasn't yet. Now, what she announced was Jan Vishwas 2.0. I think the sooner they get that out, to get the trust of the small businessmen and small entrepreneurs back to them. At the moment, they see the whole climate as being business non-friendly. That has to change. And that, Harsh, I think, MSMEs will continue to play a very important role.
So if you're wondering what to eat for lunch and you're looking for signals in the budget papers, go for shrimps. Order in some shrimps. I think a lot of focus in the budget, clearly the flavor of the palate, Rajdeep I'm sure is already placing some order, is on shrimps. I want to show some
That's
political,
again the Andhra connection.
Political,
Aquaculture.
Andhra and Gujarat, but Gujarat is always there. Andhra, they've got now, so they want to encourage everyone to go out and eat some shrimps. I want to show you some political reactions to the union budget. We'll start with Akhilesh Yadav. Let's see how, because the likes of the Trinamool are calling this a Bihar Andhra Pradesh budget. So let's take a look at how the politics is playing out over this budget.
उत्तर प्रदेश जैसा प्रदेश जो प्रधानमंत्री देता है, क्या वहाँ के किसान के लिए कुछ बड़े फैसले हैं? किसान की फसल की पैदावार, उसकी कीमत के लिए क्या कोई इंतजाम है? कहने को तो याद होगा आप सबको कि पिछली बार कहा था कि मंडी और एग्रीकल्चर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए लाखों करोड़ रुपए हैं. अगर वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर स्ट्रेंथन हुआ था तो इसका मतलब किसान की आय दोगुनी होनी चाहिए या किसान की आय बढ़नी चाहिए थी, वो तो नहीं बढ़ी. तो किसान के साथ संकट पैदा किया इन्होंने. बेरोजगारी इन्होंने बढ़ाई है. 10 साल में जो इतनी बेरोजगारी बढ़ गई उसको कैसे कम करें, और वो भी आधी अधूरी नौकरी से.
ये यूनियन बजट जो 2024-25 का पेश किया गया था, एक तरीके से सबके लिए ड्रीम बजट है, सब सेक्शन के लिए और खास करके युवाओं के लिए और महिलाओं के लिए. इससे जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, रिकॉर्ड नंबर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का जो एलोकेशन हुआ है, कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर का 11 लाख करोड़ से भी ज्यादा कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, ये ऐतिहासिक है.
ये बिहार को दे दें, झारखंड को दे दें, यूपी को दे दें. अब जनता जो आज देख रही है इनको हटाना चाहती है. अब ये निश्चित तौर से आम जनता के हित के लिए एक भी, क्या बनारस के लिए कोई कल कारखाना आया है? कोई फैक्ट्री का अनाउंसमेंट हुआ है? यूपी के लिए कुछ हुआ है? मुझे नहीं लगता कुछ भी किए. जब प्रधानमंत्री अपने संसदीय क्षेत्र में कुछ नहीं दे पा रहे हैं, मैं समझता हूं कि ये पूरा बजट निरर्थक है और जनता को केवल भ्रमित करने के लिए.
Yes, Rajiv Kumar, you wanted to intervene.
Yeah, I wanted to intervene to say that for me, one of the big ideas for the next 5-10 years is the recognition that it is the urban centers which will drive growth. And so therefore, the whole focus on reducing the stamp duties here, to get the sort of the new Awas Yojana here, the transit development, transit oriented development, the street market development for the vendors, etc. The whole, the big thing about 14 cities above 30 lakhs getting subframe, I think that's a very good thought, because that is what is going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. And because there are 400 million people waiting to be urbanized. And all of these measures are going to help that, influence that. And then the PM Awas Yojana for 1 crore new houses for the urban poor. For industrial dormitory type housing for the workers. We've tried in China all the time, but now for the first time going to be here. I think these are very good thoughts, very good ideas, and that will help, spur growth, because the urban centers, because urban cities are going to be the drivers of growth going forward.
Okay, for a moment, since you saw the political reactions, the reactions are not surprising. The states which feel left out are usually the opposition-ruled states in this instance. But that happens with most governments, particularly when you are now in a coalition arrangement and you are dependent on two allies. How do you see that in terms of this kind of federal concept that essentially is at the heart of India? Do these states which feel left out really have a case when they see all these allotments to Andhra Pradesh and Bihar?
So in Indian polity, the state-specific schemes by the central government are a rarity. But the compulsion of coalition government is what is driving. You coined this word, Purvodaya Vikas Yojana or something, but essentially it is meant for Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. So it is understandable, but certainly Odisha, which is there right in this zone, will feel quite a lot sorry about it. Let's see what is there for Odisha and how does it react. Bengal, you can politically explain, perhaps for the reasons which are known, you may not get it. But your remark about the wider, I think there is going to be resentment from the remaining states that why should we be discriminated against. And this is a very fundamental change from the way we have been doing for the last 75 years.
So that's the nature of coalition politics. It's not as if it started now. This is Narendra Modi 3.0 is a coalition government.
But earlier coalition governments also did not do it. Go back to Narasimha Rao, go back to Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. They were not as partisan in the...
No, but look at the optionality. The choice was, do you push for a special status for Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, which was the original demand, which would have involved far higher financial
a special state was a no-go anywhere.
It was never going to happen, Rahul. At least certainly Andhra Pradesh, Chandrababu Naidu.
If you've got allies, you have to take care of it.
The only thing happens is the package.
So we want to go across to a group of farmers who are standing by with my colleague Chitra Tripathi and understand. We've heard from the markets, we're hearing from India Inc., we're hearing from economists. Let's hear from the Desh Ka Kisan. Chitra, what are you picking up by speaking to these farmers? How are they reacting to this union budget for 25? क्या कह रहे हैं जिन किसानों से आप बात करिए, Chitra?
देखिए राहुल, इस वक्त मेरी मौजूदगी है नोएडा के खरौली गांव में और यहाँ पर बहुत सारे किसान हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं। 1.5 लाख करोड़ का भारी भरकम बजट यहाँ पर सरकार की ओर से दिया गया है ताकि खेती किसानी को बढ़ावा दिया सके, ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था को मजबूती दी जा सके, चाहे दलहन हो तिलहन हो, उसके लिए अलग से व्यवस्था की गई है। प्राकृतिक खेती को बढ़ावा देने के लिए यहाँ पर सरकार की ओर से बड़े बड़े ऐलान किए गए हैं। राकेश टिकैत जी इस वक्त हमारे साथ जुड़ चुके हैं इंडिया टुडे पर, सीधे इनसे बातचीत करते हैं। राकेश जी, बहुत स्वागत है आपका।
धन्यवाद।
अब ये जो बजट आ गया है निर्मला सीतारमण का, मोदी 3.0 का, क्या बातें आपको अच्छी लगी, क्या बातें मीठी, क्या खट्टी लगी, क्या लेकर जाना चाहेंगे और क्या उम्मीदें ऐसी रह गई जो लग रहा था कि पूरी हो सकती थी और नहीं हुई? राकेश जी,
देखो, खरीद की गारंटी जब तक नहीं देंगे, अगर इनको बजट बढ़ाना तो पूरी खरीद कर लो, खरीद ये करेंगे नहीं तो एमएसपी गारंटी कानून की बात कर सकते थे, वो इनसे हुई नहीं। और बिहार जैसे स्टेट जहां पे बहुत पैकेज दिया गया है, एक ये भी दे देते कि भाई जो पैसा हमने दिया है बिहार को, उससे जो वहां की मंडी सिस्टम होंगे, बाजार समिति, वो बहाल करेंगे। ये सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को करना चाहिए।
अब बिहार के किसान नेता तो आकर बोलते नहीं हैं, आप यूपी के किसान नेता बिहार के मुद्दे को लेकर आगे चलेंगे।
सबसे ज्यादा लेबर तैयार हो रही है, तो क्यों हो रही है? क्योंकि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर पूरा बिहार का खत्म कर दिया, मंडी सेक्टर है ही नहीं वहाँ पे।
इतना बिहार पे क्यों फोकस कर रहे हैं आप? अब आज का बजट कैसा लगा? पहले ये बताएं ना, इंडिया टुडे के दर्शक जानना चाहते हैं कि राकेश टिकैत जी को आज का बजट कैसा लगा?
देखो, दिल्ली के कागजू में तो बजट सरकार की नजरों में तो ठीक है, लेकिन किसान के वहां पे इसका कोई बेनिफिट नहीं होगा। सोलर पे
चीज हम छोड़ दे कि वो उस पर कितनी सब्सिडी देंगे, उसको छोड़कर दूसरा
ऐलान
और
किया गया है,
उसका किया गया है, वो कितनी देंगे उस पे वो देख लेते हैं। लेकिन दूसरा और ढुलमुल पूरा बजट रहेगा,
ढुलमुल था बजट,
ढुलमुल रहेगा।
कौन सी सबसे बड़ी उम्मीद थी जो सरकार की ओर से पूरा
देखो, सरकार की उम्मीद ये है, सरकार से उम्मीद ये करते हैं कि भाव मिल जाए हमको। ये भाव पे बात नहीं करते, भाव मत मांगो इनसे। बजट में दिया कि हम दालों को बढ़ावा देंगे, कौन सा फार्मूला है भाई? सरकार दालों का प्रोडक्शन बढ़वा देगी? दालों का प्रोडक्शन, तेल का प्रोडक्शन तो किसान बढ़ाएगा, अगर उसको पैसे मिलेंगे, उसकी खरीद होगी तो बढ़ा देगा।
तो किसान को वो सहूलियत भी देना तो सरकार की
कहाँ
जिम्मेदारी है ना, ताकि उसकी फसलों में
8-8
और
दिन
ज्यादा
तक
जिंदगी आए, उसकी फसलें
मध्य
लहराती
प्रदेश
रहे, जैसा
में
कि इस वक्त पीछे मक्का की फसल लहरा रही है।
8-10 दिन तक मध्य प्रदेश में किसान चना लेके, दालें लेके खड़ा रहता है, उसकी खरीद नहीं होती। ललितपुर जिला उत्तर प्रदेश में है, वहाँ उड़द पैदा होता है
जी,
खरीद नहीं होती, रात को मंडियां चलती है ललितपुर में। नेफेड खरीद करता है, 4 दिन में उनसे भाग जाता है, अभी तो करता ही नहीं। जिस मक्का की हम बात करते हैं, अकेले बिहार में इसी मक्का की फसल एमएसपी से नीचे बिकने में करीब 8,000 करोड़ का नुकसान है अकेले बिहार को। आप उनको फसलों के दाम दे दो।
जो बड़ी बातें सरकार की ओर से वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण की ओर से की गई हैं, जल्दी से मैं अपने दर्शकों को बताते हुए फिर अगला सवाल आपसे पूछूंगी। देखिए, प्राकृतिक खेती पर सबसे ज्यादा जोर दिया गया है। अगले 2 सालों में 2 करोड़ किसानों को बाकायदा इसका समर्थन दिया जाएगा। तिलहन क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भरता की बात कही गई है, बड़े पैमाने पर क्लस्टर ताकि सब्जी उत्पादन को बढ़ावा मिल सके। कृषि अवसंरचना में डीपीआई की बात इसमें कही गई है और 400 जिलों में डिजिटल फसल सर्वेक्षण की बात कही गई है। झींगा ब्रूट स्टॉक्स की बात कही गई है। सहकारी क्षेत्र के राष्ट्रीय सहयोग की भी बात कही गई है। 6 करोड़ किसानों की जानकारी लैंड रजिस्ट्री पर करवाई जाएगी। 5 राज्यों में नए किसान क्रेडिट कार्ड जारी किए जाएंगे और इसी के साथ ही साथ सरकार का जो फोकस है वह सरसों, मूंगफली, सनफ्लावर, सोयाबीन जैसी फसलों पर भी है।
फसलों पर तो है, बात घूम फिर कर कीमत कौन देगा?
आप एमएसपी पर गारंटी चाहते हैं?
एमएसपी गारंटी में यह होगा कि सरकार को जितनी खरीद करनी वो कर ले। जो व्यापारी सस्ते में खरीद करता है वो उसके कम पे खरीद ना करे, ये गारंटी कानून बन जाए एक। आप बढ़ाने की बात करते हो, किसान तो बढ़ा रहा है,
माइक आप ऊपर से पकड़िए।
किसान तो बढ़ा रहा है ना, लेकिन उसको कीमतें नहीं मिलती, वो कर्जे में चला गया। आप एक तरफ प्राकृतिक खेती की बात करते हो, दूसरी तरफ नैनो यूरिया को बढ़ाने की बात करते हो। वो फर्टिलाइजर है जिसका इस्तेमाल किसान करता है और वो जबरदस्ती सरकार उसको देती है और उसका कोई लाभ उसका नहीं
अब
है।
उधर वाले कहते हैं कि राकेश टिकैत तो हर अच्छे काम में भी नुक्स निकालते हैं।
नहीं,
और हमने देखा है सरकार की ओर से जितने भी बजट आए उसमें एक ही रटाया उनका जवाब रहा। उधर दूसरे पक्ष वालों की ओर से लगातार ये कोई भी अच्छी बात आपको नहीं लगी है? आज कृषि क्षेत्र के लिए जो व्यवस्था की गई है सरकार की ओर से,
अगर सोलार्स को छोड़ दे, वो कितनी सब्सिडी उस पर देंगे और वो क्या इसी बजट से जाएगा क्या? तो वो थोड़ा सा
अलग बजट की व्यवस्था
की गई है।
ये 1,52,000 करोड़ से अलग सोलर की व्यवस्था
की गई तो उसका थोड़ा ठीक लगता है कि सरकार उस पर काम कर रही है, ठीक है, लेकिन दूसरे उस पर नहीं काम कर रही। और ये जितना पैसा है नाम किसान के लिखा जाएगा, आप इसको देख लेना किस किस सेक्टर में जाएगा।
लेकिन राकेश टिकैत जी, चूंकि पश्चिमी उत्तर प्रदेश में हम बैठे हुए हैं, अगर सिर्फ यूपी की ही बात करें, 25 करोड़ की आबादी वाला राज्य, यहाँ पर पूर्वांचल के किसानों की अलग समस्या रहती है, पश्चिमी यूपी की अलग समस्या।
In terms of those were reactions from some of the farmers. Subhash Garg has some new details. He's pulled out from the budget details about how the incentives for employment are going to work. Yes, Mr. Garg.
So this is the scheme, the scheme number 1 for the incentive-linked employment, the first timers. What it says is that the scheme will provide 1 month wages, not 1 year, to all persons newly entering the workforce in all formal sectors. The direct benefit transfer of 1 month's salary will be made in 3 installments to the first-time employers as registered in the EPFO, up to 15,000, though the eligibility is up to 1 lakh. So those who have salary up to 1 lakh will receive maximum 15,000
for 1 month.
For 1 month, and it will be paid in 3 installments of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it's not
a game changer.
So it's only for 1 month.
It's only for 1 month.
So if you give an incentive for 1 month, how does that Harsh Gupta encourage employment generation in the long term?
So the employer will have to think that for the remaining months, what do I do?
No, but if you give an incentive for only 1 month, how does
And
it
that
encourage
also
your
not
job
limited to
creation?
This is only
15,000.
the first scheme. There is a second scheme on manufacturing, third scheme on EPFO, fourth. So the point is, together, does it move the needle from the incremental new hire through contract employer to on the payrolls?
No, Punita Sinha, if you give an incentive for 1 month, does that then encourage any real-world employer to enhance the number of people he has on his
No,
payroll?
not at all. In fact, you yourself had shown earlier capacity utilization has been low, job creation by the private sector is low. How much is this really going to change? It's a lot of administrative burden that you're putting on an employer. I don't think it's really going to move the needle.
Okay, Rahul Garg joins us. He's a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He's an expert on direct tax. There's been some rationalization of the tax slabs. Do you want to explain how that's likely to play out and how that benefits the middle class? Mr. Garg, welcome.
Thank you so much. I just want to make a mention that I am no more a partner with Pricewaterhouse.
Yeah, but go ahead.
But in terms of the benefit to the middle class and benefit to the people who are following the new tax regime, it is important to note that the benefit comes only to those people who are following the new tax regime. And as Finance Minister said, that new tax regime is being followed by quite a lot of number of people. Now it has been made even more attractive. And the more attractive it has been made for 3 counts. One, the slab rates have been recasted. And the second, the standard deduction has increased. And second, NPS deduction has been provided. So once the standard deduction increases, NPS is provided and the slab rate are recasted, as the Finance Minister mentioned, that a person could benefit up to 17,500 rupees in a year. So the fact that earlier also people were following the new tax regime, now it is becoming more attractive. So more people will follow the new tax regime.
That's a fair point you're making, that an effort is being made to try and make the new tax regime as attractive as possible and get more people to switch out of it. Mr. Garg, you're wanting to complete the argument you're making.
So these 3 things we need to actually understand fully, because whether it's a game changer or whether it's another scheme.
Sure.
So the first one I described.
Yes.
The second one says that the government will also provide incentive for EPFO contribution for 4 years of employment, in the first 4 years, at a specified rate.
3,000 rupees is the
Up to
third scheme.
No, that's the third scheme.
That's the third scheme.
So here it says specified rate. Now, what is that specified rate? We don't know.
And the third scheme?
And the third scheme is for non-manufacturing guys. For them, up to the salary of 1 lakh per month, they will be paid 3,000 rupees per month for 2 years towards EPFO contribution.
Yeah.
So this is the EPFO contribution being paid for some more.
This
Is it therefore more
The
about the
government also
messaging?
makes a contribution to Employee Provident Fund. So
this
apart
is
from
the
the company and the individual, the government will make a
This is
contribution.
the government contribution.
For the first 4 years, but the amount has not been specified, at least in summary I have right.
And that's what I was saying. We have had these
For 4
schemes
years.
in for last 7 years. The latest one was
No, but how does government
let me
making a
explain.
contribution to Employee Provident Fund in
It
addition to the
helps.
employer and the employer, how does that help?
So we had the scheme called ABRY, Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, which was brought after the COVID, in which the government paid both the contribution, the employers as well as employees' contribution to the EPFO. So that finished only last year, and there was no one. So I think this has been brought in to substitute for that scheme.
The point is both the employer and employee are incentivized, if some contributions are made by the government, to be on the proper payroll as opposed to subcontracted.
But it won't
the point is,
increase.
No, but what is the
magnitude
impulse?
enough
The
or not?
impulse is, think of it from the employer's mindset. Does it incentivize the employer to get people on board? Even if the government makes a contribution to the employee's provident fund account and there's an extra contribution coming in from the government side, how does it change the psyche of the employer?
Because you can attract more people. It depends on the
That's-
magnitude of the incentive.
Rahul, I think the government comes out every month with an EPFO data.
Yeah, which is itself.
And if you look at carefully, there are 3 columns in that. Number 1, the new employees who join. Number second, who left, who stopped paying contribution. And third, who earlier left have started making contribution again. So this dynamics of new coming, leaving and going is actually encouraged a whole lot by this kind of...
Okay, so I want to go across to Anshuman Magazine. Anshuman Magazine is chairperson and chief executive of CBRE, a leading real estate expert, Mr. Magazine. One of the big announcements was that an effort will be made to try and digitize land records in urban areas, in rural areas, for farmers. Now, this has been spoken of, but from the best as you understood, what impact do you think this could have on India's real estate sector and the fact that the government is now making digitization of all land records such a key priority?
For me personally, this was the biggest takeaway from the budget, because land is not an issue only for real estate. We need land for manufacturing, we need land to put hospitals, hotels, anything we do, we need land. And the biggest challenge in India was, of course, on title of land. And we've all discussed that there are lakhs of cases which are pending in the courts and why our court system is slow. As you would know, large amount of litigation in our courts are because of land disputes. Plus, what happens is, because of not getting proper title, investments are not going in as much as they should go in, and government has not been able to collect as much taxes as they can. So, if this is implemented, of course, the key is implementation. If this is implemented,
Do you think it's likely to take
a big needle mover? Yes, it will take time. Some of the states have already done it. It also depends how determined the government is. It is, it can be done. Like I said, I hope they have some timelines, and this will have a major impact on the economy, not only real estate. And it'll really unleash a huge improvement. And can you imagine both investments going into real estate? The budget talked about urban development for doing anything manufacturing. One of the big deterrents for a lot of manufacturers coming here again is to assemble land, or for anybody to do anything really in this country. So if this is implemented, this will have a major, major impact on our economy.
How do you see this play out, Rajiv Kumar? The idea that you want to digitize all land, it's currently very paper-based, discretionary, jugaad, especially in rural areas. It's not as fixed and proper.
This is an idea whose time had come 10 years ago. It's wonderful that they're doing. The states which have digitized their land record and the land sort of on the ground, as it were, Telangana, for example, have benefited a great deal. This will remove a huge amount of corruption, and at the ground level, at the tehsil and all of that level, it will facilitate land transfers, developing a market in land for both the rural areas and the urban areas, and it will take away, as it were, a lot of harassment that goes on today in land acquisition. And therefore, it will also be very good for the manufacturing industry, because they will be able to, for example, I know that in Telangana, you could order a parcel of land sitting abroad, and you could identify it on the map there and make the purchase even online. If that happens for the country as a whole, I think it's a big move forward.
Also, formal credit offtake.
It was a long time coming, but thankfully,
by the way,
for farmers,
there is already a scheme going on called Dilrem, which is there for last, and which has digitized a lot of records. I want to again see what is the difference being made now. What is the delta? So let me see the content, and then
the difference that is being made is that the central government has now accepted the importance of digitizing all land records, because it was a state government.
No, it is a central government scheme. Dilrem is a central government scheme.
Maybe it is just
there is also a unique land record being assigned, number being assigned to all the 30 odd crores records.
Can I just come in? I think it's fine even if it is already been there. A renewed focus and emphasis is good enough. To add to Rajiv ji's points, the point is, if somebody wants credit, if you have a digital land record, your credit offtake becomes much more formalized. You don't have to pay usurious, informal rates, which are double, triple digits on an annualized basis. So those kind of things,
and the patwaris get less commission.
Exactly.
The patwaris get less commission. You don't have to go.
Litigation also goes down.
But Punita, you wanted to make a point on taxes. What's the point you want to make?
We used to think that India has reached like a tax stability regime, but this budget makes me believe that They've tinkered on taxation on so many different things, whether it's customs duty, long-term gains, income taxes, that there is no more tax stability that we can expect in the next few years. There could be further changes every year, whether it's on capital gains, whether it's on income tax, whether it's on customs duty. Just a few years ago, they raised customs duty on gold. Today, they brought it down.
When the big political messaging is no tinkering, continuity. Anshuman Maxine, do you buy that argument that Punita Sinha is making, that it's, now, for example, long-term capital gains increased to 12.5. It could increase further next year. We don't know where it's going to. There's no message that this is a cap. And they've tinkered and tweaked. For example, they raised gold customs duty. Now they brought down gold and silver. So you now are back in the old days where you never know what's happening. And it could increase, it could decrease, depending on what the financial and political imperative of that moment is.
Certainly, this is disconcerting, and the fact is there were so many other list of requests on actually reducing taxes which were completely ignored. And in fact, every budget, what I've been saying is that the government is widening taxes, which is fine, but logically, whenever you widen taxes, you need to reduce taxes, right? But we continue to widen taxes, but don't reduce taxes. Maybe in some places we do. So I would still sort of, I hope there is, better sense that while we reduce taxes, while we widen taxes, reduce tax rates while we widen the tax net.
Reduction of customs duty on gold and silver. To what extent do you think this is likely to reduce corruption?
Imagining
sir, 1 second, one at a time, please. Yes.
No, this is again a very welcome move, because the more you raise the customs duties on gold, the more you encourage smuggling. And more you encourage smuggling, the more you are getting caught in that whole black.
The counter is you don't want people investing in non-productive assets like gold, right? Which is why you had customs duty.
The point also is that if you are successfully able to monetize gold with the household, which Subhash tried actually, then it's not non-productive investment. It can be very productive investment. In fact, even today, companies like Muthoot and others, you can get money, you can monetize the gold holding that you have. And this is why there's a big effort at the moment. So I think the custom duty on gold imports had been reduced to 2 and 2.5%. Then it was successively raised by this government. I think it's a good one to reduce.
Large parts of our audience will be urban middle class, who will wonder what is in this budget for us. What have we got out of the budget, positive and negative? If they were to look at this budget closely and wonder about that, what would that be? What would it give them a feeling of cheer today? And what would make them feel that there is really nothing yet again for the Indian middle class?
So for the tax-paying middle class, about 8 to 9 crore households who file the returns, the fact that standard deduction has been increased by about 25,000 rupees, and the minimum taxation limit has been raised in the alternative scheme from 6 to 7, which she counted gives a certain kind of benefit, about 17,500, what she mentioned. I think that's a very clear gain for them. But to my mind, this is much lower than what they were expecting. This is not the, I don't think they will feel very happy about it. So they'll say, all right, something has come, but not really something.
In fact, there was an expectation that given that the fiscal situation is looking healthier, that there will be a cut in income tax rate for the middle class, which has not happened. And so I think that's a disappointment.
And again here,
that hasn't happened in a long time.
And again, that 30% slab, which kicks in at 15 lakh, remains unchanged. So 15 lakh is a very low income level
Can
today.
I just slightly disagree there? Yes. The point is, Indian per capita income is just slightly above 2 lakh rupees. Like median income is around 1 lakh something. In the US, the median, the mean income is $80,000, and the income tax kicks in around $20,000. Here, it is the exact opposite. It's 2 lakh rupees, it kicks in at 8 lakh rupees. So from the government's point of view, there is not much space. The people who think are middle class are actually 90 percentile people in this country. They're not actually 50 percentile.
I think it's a very strong point that Harsh is making. Yes, accepted that the audience here is middle class. But the point is that the economic policies cannot continue to be made to just keep favoring the better offs, which is what it is. If the tax exemption rate is 5 lakhs and the per capita income is 1.65, 1.85 lakhs, you're already very well off when you're there. So therefore, the budget, economic policies have to be made for those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, and for their
sure, but
increasing
this government has
employment
faced
and
the charge
skilling.
in the past, particularly with the corporate tax, where that it's the top, the creamy layer who's really benefited. That large part in the middle of this country, which is the driving engine of India, whether you can, you can claim that they actually earn 2 lakhs a month, that they are the ones who claim they haven't got enough out of the government.
Which is why
why do I not get tax breaks, let's say, for education, for health? That's where I want...
No, let us be consistent, which is why, for example, LTCG has been raised from 10% to 12.5%. So when it goes from 10 to 12.5%, it most disproportionately impacting the wealthy who are investors. Then we cannot criticize that.
Sure.
Then say inequality is rising because the so-called middle class is not getting cuts. Again, the 50 percentile of this country is earning around 1 lakh per year on a per individual basis.
Yes.
So I'm
But
just
there's
saying
been-
the middle class is a sense of psychology which all of us share. But it is not a numerical middle class in a 50 percentile sense. It may sound harsh, no pun intended, but that is the reality.
Okay.
But there's been no penalization of the ultra-rich, which also across the world, as you know, there is this billionaire tax and all of that coming. But in India, the dividend tax has not been increased, so the promoters...
Dividend is at the marginal rate.
But you saw what happened during the election.
DDT was removed.
Someone raised the possibility of an inheritance tax or wealth tax, and immediately there was a reaction. I mean, it's all very well.
They will always be, but...
So taxation in this country just matters to those who are outside the tax.
Dividend is taxed at the full income.
Get a sense of size.
But wealth tax is very much justified. Of course, for the reasons which you said, they will not
No,
bring
people
it.
will end up making trusts. I don't think wealth tax, inheritance tax
Wealth
helps.
tax is
No,
No, but let's
Trust
not
me,
go
because
crazy
it's
here.
not
One second,
income.
Rajdeep.
No, that's not the
One
way.
second. This will impact you also. The fact is that if you keep doing these things, like the billionaire tax, for example, that Brazil has brought,
saying Rajdeep
it
is a
will.
billionaire?
No, I'm saying this will only encourage people who are well-to-do to move to places like Dubai and park their money
No, my
overseas.
point is, A, they've already, a large number of them have already moved. And B, when you gave them the kind of tax bonanza that they got a few years ago...
First, you're telling them invest.
No. What did they do after that?
Spend in
Why
the
didn't-
India
but
story.
they didn't. They
Then you
didn't.
tax them in this fashion. Why
No,
will
no,
they stay?
I'm
Purnika
not
Sinha will,
saying-
she'll never come back from Boston.
No,
She'll stay in Boston.
let's not
I'm not coming back.
I'm not saying that tax.
this is
I'm
true.
only asking you. I'm asking you that one of the criticisms of this government has been that they've benefited the people at the top of the
Yes.
pyramid, the creamy layer, who didn't actually proportionately give back to the economy. Those in the middle. Now we can define the middle in different ways.
even the-
have not had the same
This is
amount
the
of
government
benefits.
which raised the
and
top
there has
rate.
been welfareism for those at the bottom. Now we thought the Kisan Samman Nidhi would increase. As of now, it hasn't. I was surprised. I thought 6,000 would go up to 8,000 was the expectation. That's not happened.
The
Now,
first,
surely that could have been
the first
done.
Nirmala Sitharaman budget actually raised taxes, the marginal tax rate, including surcharge, on the highest earners. It was only partially rolled back last year. So they are paying around 40% taxes, including on their dividends. The LTCG has gone up, STCG has gone up, STT has gone up. So to say that the most well-off are not getting their share,
I am one of those who's been hit.
as much.
I am one of those who's been hit.
disproportionately people in liquid assets are likely to be the well-off.
This constant refrain about
So let's not
the
play both
corporate
sides.
tax deduction hasn't led to corporate investment.
Yes.
I think it's past. Because, as the Axis Bank, research study points out, they've invested about 35 lakh crore in the last 2 years. The investment rate has increased up by 19%. So the corporates are coming up. But now there is an issue of demand creation, which this government is trying to address through employment generation.
So let's ask Mr. Tyagarajan that question. He's the managing director at Blue Star. Mr. Tyagarajan, this question about whether the incentives that have been rolled out for employment generation will actually lead to new jobs being created. From what you've understood from your position and from the others you've been speaking to at CII, what impact do you think these incentives will actually have on the job market?
Thank you, Rahul. It's a pleasure interacting with you. I think it would. For CII, I head the consumer durables and electronics sector. And the job-linked incentives that we asked for in the pre-budget memorandum, that has happened. I am particularly happy about the internship scheme of 5 years, 100 million youth to be trained, that is win-win-win. The youth gains, the corporates gain, and the country gains. Now, as far as our sector is concerned, there were two things that propelled us. Number one is connected with the 15% tax for new manufacturing units. One would have expected one more scheme would have been announced with a sunset period of another 3 years. That's a disappointment. The other one is connected with the PLI scheme extensions. But having said that, we are very happy about the fiscal discipline that is being maintained. That is laudable. Now, inconsistent with the current government's theme, it's not some big incentives are being rolled out in order to get there, whether we are getting the fundamentals correct. So our focus has been building scale. The consumption will have to go up in India so that we are able to reach that scale to compete with China elsewhere in the global markets. The 1 lakh crore rupees which was set aside for R&D and innovation, that has to come into operation. We have to implement it faster if we have to really get there. Domestic value addition will have to happen, and we should learn to compete with China. I hold the view that this China plus one, we take for granted that one is India. I don't think we are anywhere near that at all. We will learn to compete with them by allowing them to be here also under FDI. The economic policy has laid out that they will consider, as long as Chinese companies follow the law of the land and they are going to do the domestic value addition, we should compete with them in order that we compete with them in US or Europe. And so our direction has been clear that we have to do a lot to become competitive. And I am happy with regard to a few things that have happened. Perhaps the 15% tax for new manufacturing units could have been done. That didn't happen. Lastly, the green credit scheme, it's a very important one in order to encourage people to follow life, like a 5-star air conditioner or a 5-star appliance. That green credit is a very important tool. That is how the Japanese did it. That's how Chinese did it. And I thought there will be a mention that wasn't there. But having said that, fiscal discipline, JLI or the job-linked incentive and the internship scheme make me happy.
Mr. Thiagarajan, thank you for joining us. We'll come back to you for more later. That's Mr. Thiagarajan from Blue Star. Yes.
So this internship scheme is only in 500 top companies.
Yeah. BSE 500. No, what? What
that
500?
has not been defined.
Broadly
they will
defined.
define. So internship can be only in 500 top companies.
What does top mean?
They will explain.
Listed 500 top
They
companies.
don't know.
Turnover or profit or whatever it is.
How all of this will presumably be explained at a subsequent date?
Internship is only if you are in the 500 companies.
Only those 500 top companies will be able to have this internship scheme
Benefits.
in which the government will pay 5,000 rupees per month for 1 year.
Well, what is the problem there?
No, there is no
what is the issue?
there is a lot of problem because you are the 500 top companies, if you define, let us say, by market capitalization, are highly technologically oriented companies. We may not even have the internship requirement of this kind.
No, and they'll hire as per their outlook. They won't hire because of some internship program.
Why limit to 500?
It's a good beginning, I would say.
That's a beginning.
It's a beginning.
Because otherwise
you don't know
Sir,
why
look at
it
it
not
this way.
happen.
No, 1 second.
Because the
I'll try and
implementation will not
explain.
happen.
So I'll try and ask you this question. Now, these are 500 companies, which are the biggest companies. They already have an employment outlook, which is fixed as per their management plans. Just because a new scheme is being brought in, they'll take a few interns.
Rahul,
but how does that encourage job creation?
Rahul, it is an internship.
Yes.
An internship is about learning job skills on the job. And if you are actually encouraging even technologically oriented companies, as Subhash is saying, even better. because then they will be
No, so I've
incentivized.
understood. So you get the internship,
Yes.
you get a certain amount of money, the intern gets a certain amount of money. How does it ultimately encourage job creation?
Because it generates skills
More
which are required
employability.
in the industry.
But their employment outlook is still determined by their own
But I give
management.
you an example. There is the Maharashtra Open University scheme run by Vivek Sawant, who used to be the head of the CDMA, the Param Computer. He runs an open university. All his students are interns and apprentices. The placement record is 120%. He is nowhere else.
Rajiv,
Yes, but how many such institutes are there?
Can I come in just for a moment?
No, just a minute. Because internship is part of education. You are studying somewhere, then you do internship.
Yes.
Where are 1 year internship programs in education schemes?
No, because internship can also be, part-time.
Or
So that's
immediately
not
after.
internship.
But you see, Harsh,
It's
we've
a
seen the
flexibility.
challenge, the visual challenges we've seen in different parts of the country. The moment any company opens up, say, 100 jobs or even 200 jobs, there are 30,000 applicants for those 200 jobs. Many of them are perhaps overqualified for those jobs. Many of them perhaps are underqualified. There is a huge problem at the moment between demand and supply. So companies you're giving directionally companies an incentive. As most of the corporates are also coming, they're pleased with this job-linked incentive scheme. Is it enough unless you are able to create employability, you're able to match skills to the jobs that are available? There's a shortage of jobs available at the end of the day.
No. Since you mentioned a shortage of jobs, let me set the record straight. There's a shortage of white-collar jobs with lifelong tenure. There is not a shortage of jobs.
Shortage of employable jobs.
No. I'm sorry. As somebody who is earning 60 to 70,000 rupees driving an Uber in Delhi or Mumbai, he is very well employed. But the point is, for every Uber job, there are not 10,000 people standing outside. Whereas you'll get a PhD for even a relatively low-level government job, because he or she knows that they will, once they get the job, they will retire with a pension, with health benefits, etc. So the problem is not jobs. The problem is white-collar jobs with lifelong tenure.
Which you can outsource to your cousin and not do.
Of course, and
teachers,
a lot of
government schools
which
do.
is why in Uttar Pradesh, for example, there are protests against government school teachers being recorded their attendance digitally. So this whole narrative of not there being jobs is not factually correct. It's a job.
There is the problem. There is a crisis. You're saying that the problem is that you have enough jobs at C and D category. At the bottom of the pyramid, there are enough. As you go above, there are fewer jobs or fewer
many of these jobs are paying more money than even A or B jobs. But the problem is job tenure is not there.
No, the fact
lifelong
is,
security is not there.
This is a bit like the Pakauda wala argument, right? The problem with that argument is those who are seeking jobs don't think they have a job. The government and those in government can keep claiming that they have some kind of employment.
It's not claiming. The
the
people
person is not
actually are
happy
working in Ubers as Ola's
there are
delivery
still
boys.
enough people clamoring for jobs. Thousands of people coming each time to the job vacancy.
Sure, because
and it's also a global problem. So let's acknowledge that it's not just restricted to
of
India.
course, it's a Chinese problem. It's a Western problem. My simple point is, if you have government jobs with salaries much higher than median per capita income, you'll have security till you die, then of course the demand for that in a society like India, where even unfortunately the Dahej is linked to your job requirement, is very high. It is a sociological economic reality of India. To say there are not enough jobs is a separate point.
But I'm saying there's a big political pushback on that issue because people are not accepting this argument that there are jobs.
There can't be government jobs for everybody.
Can I get
of course they can't. Yes,
a
Mr.
reality check.
Yes.
The government's own PLFS, Periodic Labor Survey, last 22-23, it says that over 5 years we have had growth from about 49% to 57%.
On the labor force participation.
On the labor force participation. You know what is the biggest constituent of that growth?
Self-employed.
No. There is a category called unpaid labor in family enterprise.
No, that's not the biggest.
No, that is the biggest.
56% of those employed are self-employed. Of the self-employed, 18.7% are those
23%.
in family unpaid labor.
23% of the total
No, but this is all right.
employed.
You see, the point is,
that
Rahul, the point is, the government has accepted that the employment is a challenge.
I think that you see the messaging. You're right, Mr. Garg, that many of these schemes are going to have to be tested.
Yes.
Are these schemes simply there on paper? Will they actually result in some game-changing?
That is precisely the point.
That's the question. The fact, though, is at least the government has signaled that
correct.
what we are calling Rahul, what we call jobonomics or Naukrinomics is at least finally top of the agenda. She started her speech today with employment. In the past, and we have spent the last 1 hour, 30 minutes out of that on employment, which is perhaps a recognition that, times are changing, and thank God for that.
R. Mukundan joins us. He's the Chief Executive at Tata Chemicals. Let's bring in a voice from India Inc. on whether the incentives that have been provided for employment and internships, the kind of impact they have on the employment outlook and the psyche of a corporate titan like you, Mr. Mukundan. How do you see this play out in the real world?
So in terms of I think it's a very welcome step. We have been highlighting to government that jobs, skills and employment should be one of the key priorities, and this budget does go in the right direction. In terms of the employment incentives and the incentives for internships, training which has been provided, firstly, it will skill the workforce of tomorrow. Secondly, including when somebody comes into the company, we know for first few months the person is less productive till he becomes fully productive, because we've got to train those people to be completely adapted to the industry they come in. I think that's the gap the government has filled in terms of saying we will come and support during that period. So you've got to think of this as not to be an enabler for the industry to make everybody fully productive, fully skilled, to be employed in a way that they are contributing positively to industry.
Now, how would a company like yours actually work on this scheme? What would you do? Honestly, given the kind of incentives, what would a company like yours actually do now?
We actually run a very, very large apprenticeship program in Gujarat in a district called Devbhoomi Dwarka, and our apprentices and interns actually get employment not just in India but in Middle East and overseas. We will certainly expand that ambit of the program. In addition to that, I think the finance minister also has brought in a large proportion of women participation, including the focus on self-help group, which also we run in that part of India. So this is actually going to provide a large impetus in terms of income generation as well as employment generation.
So you think that this will...
No, but does it change your employment outlook? Let's assume somebody comes and does his internship, is now more skilled for Tata Chemicals than he would have been otherwise if he'd started on day one. But does it at the end of the year make you hire more people than you would have otherwise? That's ultimately the debate that we were having. Does it actually lead to more jobs being created, Mr. Mukundan?
Yeah, fundamentally, I think if you look at it, jobs is one issue, but I think if you look at the industry and speak to MSME and so many other companies, they don't have training facilities which we may have, the big companies, big 500 companies may have, which is where the focus of the finance minister has been. I think those smaller companies will now get access to skilled workforce. If you meet the MSMEs, they clearly say one of the drawbacks of their growth has been the issue of access to skilled labor. And I think this is going to provide that skilled labor for them to move forward. So really I'm saying, rather than say that the companies providing training are the ones which are going to provide employment, because when we do training, I think only maybe 15-20% of those trainees probably get jobs in our company or around our company, but most of them actually get jobs other places. For example, they would join construction sites which are run by other companies. They would join, let's say, distributors and maintenance the workshops of many of the companies which have them all over India in automotive sector. So really, this is about skilling people to get meaningful jobs. See, we have focused a lot on this country on graduation, but not on skill. I think this whole shift towards skilling is very, very important. And I think that shift is what the government has brought about. They have allowed the participation of the private sector into this. It's a welcome move.
And I think, Rahul, while we focus on the union budget, the challenge also will be for the state governments. Much of India's challenges don't lie in Delhi, they lie at state capitals. If the state capitals are embrace many of these schemes, and some states have already done it. We're looking as if this is, Nirmala Sitharaman has done something brand new. In states like Tamil Nadu, many of these schemes are already in practice. 40%, I was staggered to know that 40%, for example, of women workforce in India comes from Tamil Nadu alone, which is working in industry and factories. These states have already incentivized women. They've done a lot already on the ground. If all other states were able to, in some way, also collaborate, cooperate, then you might actually be able to scale up. Otherwise, frankly, I think what Mr. Garg says is a concern that, these schemes will exist on paper, they will provide some signals, but won't go beyond the signal and messaging.
Mr. Mukundan, thank you for joining us. We'll come back to you for more later. Punita Sinha, we're seeing the markets recover to some extent. The BSE now down 550 odd points. It was down 1,000 plus earlier. Why do you think the markets are recovering, Ron?
No, see, there is, first of all, the flow of money like through SIPs. That isn't going to suddenly change overnight. So that is a plan that will continuously, funds have been sitting on cash because the market valuations were stretched. So they're using some of these dips to maybe buy back because the long-term health is still good.
How does this impact the outlook of foreign portfolio investors looking at the India story at this moment with the current price-earning multiples?
Well, I think they'll wait for more dips. Because the change in tax regime does raise, as I said earlier, the concern that do we have a stable tax regime, and this is directionally not great, and it could signal more increases in the
Just
future.
one quick data point.
Yeah, and I just also wanted to say that, this will cause some reallocation in asset holdings of
away
investors.
from equities.
Away from equities, a little bit more towards bonds, towards gold. Today, if you see gold stocks are up big. So already it is happening. So there is that asset allocation
During the festive
shift.
season, there's likely to be a big scramble to buy some gold.
Yeah, so there'll be some more, and real estate, because land records are going to get digitized, focus on, so I think those asset
The government
classes
signaling wanting to move money away from the public markets
to other
towards
asset
either
classes.
startups because the angel
Yes.
tax is gone,
Yeah.
or towards gold, or towards real estate,
or towards bonds, to a little,
or towards bonds. How does this, Harsh, impact all the international bond indices, which were already making space for India? Do you think it consolidates and speeds up that
India
process?
remains by far the best risk-reward, large emerging market story for bond investors in the world. Just to give you a comparison, China's 10Y is at 2%. We are around 7%, slightly less today, 6.9 something. So it remains, and of course the rupee has been remarkably stable for 1.5 years. So they think in terms of dollar returns. But even on equities, I would slightly disagree and say, right now the Nifty 50 multiple is trailing 23 times something. Foreign investors are likely to come back less because of any specific tax issues in India, more because of Fed rate cuts in the US, the dollar cycle turning.
No, but they have other international opportunities. The question is,
but there is no...
how attractive is
It's a
India?
week or two of uncertainty.
I'm probably less than that, because I think MSCI EM index, India has gone from 6% of the index to 19% right now.
I have to, get Harsh to stop saying Morgan Stanley Emerging Countries Index unless he explains what that is.
So globally, these emerging market
This will be
indices,
bang.
globally emerging market indices for equities, India was at 5 or 6% 3-4 years ago. Right now, it's 19-20%. China went down from 40% to 24% right now. Russia has been removed from those indices. South Korea is about to be reclassified as a developed markets. So if you think from the point of view of an investor sitting in New York or London, there are not many bright opportunities at scale in the emerging markets beyond India.
Okay, Janmay Sinha joins us. He's the chairperson at Boston Consultancy, joining us now on this broadcast. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinha. The biggest focus has been on the real-world impact of the employment-linked incentives and the internship schemes that have been brought, and whether this fosters new job creation. You're a consultant. These are the kind of questions you grapple with all the time. So what's your response to that? We don't have all the minute details, but broadly, directionally, do you think it fosters new job creation?
Look, I think, when we talk about job creation at the level of 7-8 million jobs a year, these don't get created overnight. I like the focus on total factor productivity improvement, which is looking at all the reforms, which was the 9th point that was made in the overall, that it will actually look at everything from an efficiency perspective. And it will also try and reduce the amount of interference at the state and municipal level that the governments currently do. See, a budget, from my perspective, this was a very comforting budget because I saw the fiscal deficit target at 4.9 going down to 4.5, a relook at GST and increasing its ambit later, relooking at direct and tariffs again from a point of view of getting out any of the hitches that are there in the system. So trying to get into the economy and taking out all these small arbitrages here and there. That is what is needed. No country will ever be able to provide 7, 8, 9 million jobs. These have to be created by increased efficiency in the factors of production being used. And that is the focus. Now, how much is being spent on health? How much is being spent on education? How is it being spent? Those are important questions. But all of this is within the geopolitical and the Indian political economy. You know, as a Bihari, I can't contest a little bit of money going to Bihar. But otherwise, I mean, you know, it is a tough act to look at it geopolitically in an era of industrial policy being springing across all over the world. And if with tariff 60% tariff rates, if Trump becomes president, you know, so it's a interesting.
So now, one of the things the economic survey said is we should attract Chinese investments into India because there's a trade imbalance. So get foreign direct investment from China into India. The government hasn't explicitly in the budget said anything about China, quite naturally. But in the text of the economic survey and in the implicit messaging, do you think we're now reaching a zone where there will be increasingly a thaw with China on the question of investment? The next time a BYD wants to come in, are they more likely to get clearances?
Look, you know better than me that last year India's trade with China increased despite all the rhetoric. So when you are dependent on so many core imports from China, to talk about the fact that you will not trade with China is just not practical. And if you can actually get investments in India which you can control, then that's not a bad thing. But, you know, in which areas, I think one will have to go into the nitty-gritty to understand. Just getting more manufacturing and building up capabilities in manufacturing in India is not a bad thing. But that does not change the geopolitical tension that India and China will continue to experience. But we will all need to know areas of conflict and areas of accentuated contestation and those areas and even some areas of cooperation. So all those will continue to happen. And as India becomes a middle power and stuff, it will have to be more agile how it deals geopolitically with all these different countries. But at a basic level, it has to strengthen its financials and, you know, reducing fiscal deficit, improving our credit rating. All that really helps us stand on our own feet and go up even further with MSCI indices and others as was being discussed earlier. So I really am now also hoping that credit rating agencies look at India again carefully, because you know, our debt to GDP ratio will be coming down. And some of these increases in you know, taxes on capital gains is because of a little bit of the froth in the market, which everyone is getting concerned about. You know, I mean, the level of the market capitalization to GDP is quite high, and everyone should start expecting a correction, but no one likes it.
Okay. Mr. Sinha, I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate all our guests joining us. One thing that I would love to know from them, the so-called regulatory cholesterol, which everyone speaks about, how much of it has actually gone? I'm still waiting for that budget which actually really does remove the regulatory cholesterol. There's a lot of tinkering, some of it good this time, some of it maybe uneven, but that hasn't yet happened, Rahul. So maybe they will be able to tell you that one day.
We're not done, far from. You know, we're firing up the budget intelligence dashboard. There's a lot of allocations which the finance minister spoke about but didn't mention how it had changed. We'll compare that with what was announced in the interim budget and then what was announced previously to actually get a sense of, because there are words and then there are numbers. The words, frankly, are quite meaningless. The numbers that tell you the story. We'll try and decode the real story of the budget.